Okay, we're live. Hi, Jenna. Welcome to this UK Addiction Treatment Centre's webinar, which is around trying to answer a lot of the frequently asked questions that people might have before they come to rehab. And I think what we're going to try and do here is, run through a list of questions that we've got, that we've both had a look at, and try and help people, answer some of the questions that they might have, try and understand how things might look. Just to give them a real human perspective of of how it looks, rather than it being all official or just written. The video would be useful to give people a sense of who you are. So do you want to start with that, let people know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, for sure. I'm Jenna. I'm the centre manager at Sanctuary Lodge, which is in Halstead, Essex. We house up to 23 clients here at any one time, and we specialise in addiction, but we often get clients that are dual diagnosis. Our residential programme is 28 days, but we get clients that come in for a variety amount of days. It can vary from 7, and we've had clients stay with us up to 2-3 months. And I think that just depends where they're at, obviously, in their journey and of what their needs are. Yeah.
And is 28 days like a sort of, do more people come for 28 days than they do for other short or longer amounts?
Yeah, we find the majority of people come for 28 days. That's when you kind of see that level of motivation as well, because 28 days, if we're being honest as well, is a drop in the ocean if someone is suffering with addiction. And they will have most likely been suffering with it for many years. So 28 days can feel like a small drop in the ocean for that. But we often find even clients that come in for less time, around 10 days, 14 days, often want to extend. Yeah. Because if you do for 28 days, there's a lot more on offer as well in regards to the programme and helping you connect with the 12 steps as well.
Mm. What sparks my interest is, like, when you say people come for 10 or 14 days and then they want to extend, what is it you think they notice, they see, that makes them want to stay longer?
I think the primary thing is they're not alone. They're not alone. For the first time, they feel, and it's no fault to anyone else, but they feel someone else understands their thinking. They're not the only one that's maybe doing what's considered crazy things, or, where they're just a bad person or anything like that. It's understanding, and it's connection, and it's in a safe environment that's not judged, because other people are in similar boats.
Yeah, that sounds so important and so valuable to people that have felt so isolated and disconnected for such a long time, I would say.
Absolutely. For us, what we say, the best way to tackle addiction is through connection. And for anyone that's coming into treatment, they have been very isolated, and they've isolated themselves in order to be able to continue a behaviour. But when they come here, they find that they're not alone in doing that, and actually other people understand how quick their thoughts are, how many thoughts they get a day, how they're quite impulsive sometimes with behaviours, that they don't mean to hurt people, but that's what seems to happen. So it's a real opportunity to connect with other people for the first time in a long time for a lot of people.
Yeah, it sounds loving and kind, and I think that sort of warm environment is essential to helping people, have a look at themselves and go through the process, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those supportive environments that gives them an opportunity to really open up and say everything that they want to say, because they're not alone in it, but also to hear other people go through very similar experiences, and they can all come from different backgrounds, different lifestyles, different experiences, but the one common thing they have is what addiction has kind of stripped them of and taken away from them. And it's that opportunity to really kind of put it out there and look at it in a really supportive environment that kind of calls people out on their behaviours as much as it does support them with what's going on and what they've been going through.
Yeah, cool. So let's have a look at some of these questions that people might have. So the first one is, can you force someone to go to rehab? I know that a lot of frustrated family members and loved ones, will be interested in this question, and I think that that's the somewhat life role that they've been thrown into outside of their own choice, where they've got somebody they really care about, and they think that rehab is the best thing for them, and they really get into that tussle or that battle of trying to gently suggest, like on a varying scale, gently suggest or force, someone this is what you need to do. So how does that play out usually, and is that useful?
It's not really useful, no. I understand it, absolutely, because we often say addiction isn't just a one-person illness, it's a family illness. It ripples through the family, and it really has an impact on the rest of the family as well. So I can completely understand where family members and loved ones want to come from. But to force someone into rehab just means that, you have to understand, for that person that has addiction, you're asking them to change everything. And they need to be able to have a certain amount of motivation to want to do that as well. If they don't, and it's pushed upon them, then they're not coming in for the right reasons. They're coming in to try and make it better for other people, but they're almost setting themselves up to fail. So the best way that I could probably, and what we do say to families is have conversations with them. Absolutely. Try and listen is a really, really important thing. Listen to what they're saying, actually, because, and it will take time, and it might not be so easy because they may be in active addiction. And I think if someone is consistently in active addiction, then what I would suggest for family members is about boundary, which isn't so much an ultimatum. A boundary is about what's acceptable to you and what's not acceptable. So being able to say to their loved ones, actually, it's not acceptable for this behaviour to continue for me. So I'm either going to remove myself from the environment, or I suggest that maybe you look into a rehab or something. Then absolutely, by all means, provide them with information. But they need to have a part in playing to say, actually, I want to come in. Now, if that's only 1%, that's something we can work with. But we do ultimately need 1%. Otherwise, we find that they just come in wanting to fight the program, fight the opportunity to get well, because they're not ready to put it down yet. They're not ready to surrender.
Yeah. And I think what you said about listening is really important, because it can be, if you've been trying to force somebody in to do something, and they generally switch off, and it's kind of and they're just they feel the pressure of it all the time. But when you listen to them, they tend to open up more. And from that place, you just have more of an opportunity to get through to them and sort of speak to them on a level where they might consider getting help, versus, constantly feeling that force of trying to push somebody into it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's, for someone that's in addiction, as much as it may look that they're carrying on with some form of life, they've actually lost all control over themselves. So being able to provide them with some information and just say, there's some stuff out there, there's some opportunity out there, we're willing to support you. We can't do it for you, but we're willing to support you, gives them the opportunity to start at least thinking about it. And that might take some time. Some people might be straight on board with it. Some may take a couple of weeks. Some might want to come and visit the centre and just see what it's like and speak with the staff, because people can have an expectation of rehab. It's not really something that's necessarily discussed or talked about. So this helps to kind of open them up, to look at the brochure and see that it's not somewhere that's locked with bars or things like that. It's a completely open environment. People are free to leave whenever they want. It's we're not keeping people here that don't want to be here, because we know that's not going to help them. And when they're ready for it, we want to make sure the door's open for them. But that can be quite hard for family members and loved ones to understand, and something that we do a lot in our family group session is we tell families about the 3 C's. They're not the cause of it, they can't cure it, and they can't control it. And we try and encourage family members to turn that into a mantra for themselves, because they take a lot of that responsibility on, and it's not theirs to carry. It's not possible to man someone 24/7 a day. So trying to remind themselves of that helps to reduce their fears and their anxieties, and then they can listen to their loved ones. So sometimes that's always just a bit of information that we think is really useful. And a lot of our family members, it takes time. It does take time because you have that emotional involvement as well. But it's about, if you can take that step back, then you're able to be there for what they need and not enter their chaos, because that can be dangerous.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'd love to add is like you covered it, but like being more direct, is that it's good for family members to get help for themselves too, right? I mean, if they're struggling with, like, you know, if it always feels like a battle, like they're trying to force someone else to get help, it's always good to get their own help, you know, to feel listened to and to understand themselves more. So then they're more able to show up for that other person in that non-confrontational way, right?
Absolutely, yeah, because we find a lot with family members and our own, you know, experience within the team. You know, you lose that role. You're no longer the wife, the mother, the child. You are like the carer. And when you become the carer, it can become fear driven, and it can become trying to control situations that's just not possible. So it's really important for family members to get that support as well, and not carry that secret alone. Often a lot of family members want to protect that loved one, but sometimes actually what they need to do is get that support themselves, because it's not it's an illness that just really does want to ripple through the whole family and destroy it. So this is that opportunity. The more it's out there and the more it's spoken about, the more you haven't got to do it by yourself.
Yeah. Brilliant. So I think that's really good information for anyone, you know, who's got that dilemma. So the next question that we've got is, I think we've covered, you know, how to get them into rehab without force, you know, and a lot of what we've said is kind of like, it's really covering those two angles. But the next one is like, when is addiction bad enough to seek help, you know? And it's like, I think that parents or loved ones, you know, often get into the place of doubting themselves, you know, and it's kind of like that they can tell that something's not right. They have a sense of knowing that something's off here, something's not going right, and they've not been used to trusting that intuition, you know, or not able to have that level of communication where they can sort of question, hey, I'm noticing this, something doesn't feel right, particularly if the person's lost in addiction, you know. It's like, so bar that, you know, it's kind of like, how do people recognize, how do people know when, you know, it's time to make a decision to say, hey, have you thought about going to rehab? You know, things are getting really bad now, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, there is absolutely, you know, what you say is initially it's that first thing. If you're having that thought that something's wrong, it's trusting that gut reaction. There's a reason that you're having that process. You know, you're never going to get any harm by someone going to rehab and just getting a bit of extra support. You know, there's nothing wrong in that. And I think there's also that kind of myth that, you know, but, you know, my loved one or my partner or whoever it is themselves that may be suffering with addiction, I don't use every day. I don't use all day. It's not about that. It's about the fact that actually relationships are getting impacted. Work might be getting impacted. You may be struggling to get up in the morning and function. You know, it becomes that you lose all your interests, your hobbies. You know, you feel that you can't function without something. You know, if loved ones, if they're noticing small behaviour changes, that they just don't see themselves, they're not present, then that's often something that's going on, because addiction is never actually about the substance. It's about the person and the behaviour that's going with it. So we can always remove the substance, and then look at what is going on for the person.
Yeah. And what are some of the telltale signs that people might notice, you know, like what sort of things would people be looking out for to, you know, to give them, I know that sense, they're going to have a sense of like intuition that something's not right, but what sort of things would people look out for?
I think it's changes in patterns and routines. I think it can be subtle things. It could be if someone's starting arguments at a particular time of day to kind of be able to leave the house or leave the room. It could be if someone's spending a lot of time in a room by themselves, or they constantly go out somewhere at a certain time. I think if they're all of a sudden coming back late from work or going to work late. Mood swings are a key thing to look out for as well. You might find that one minute absolutely everything's fine and everything's being done. The next minute you're not seeing them. They might not be around for a couple of days. You might be feeling like you're walking on eggshells. You don't know whether you want to say something or you don't want to say something. You're worried that you might say something. It might mean that they leave and go and use, or anything like that. If you're starting to have that kind of thing, and for someone that's suffering with addiction, I think it's harder for them to notice those changes because they're in it. They don't see it. Their addiction wants to distort their thinking and lie to them. It wants to tell them that everything is okay and everyone else has got a problem, not them. So it's harder for them to kind of really see that. So sometimes they might need loved ones to point it out and just say, hey, how are you? I haven't really had time to sit down and talk to you lately. What's going on? Or sometimes they might just need, the way in I sometimes find, is to talk about really normal things, reality TV, football, just to get them talking first before because it just helps them to relax and open up sometimes. Because they're still a human being. Everyone's still normal. We're just, whatever normal is, that is who we are, and it's not labeling people. It's not trying to zoom in on people and that becomes the whole focus. That's just one aspect of them. And it's being able to acknowledge that as a whole.
Yeah. And is that insight that you've got into all those experiences, is that from all the families that you've spoke to, like of people that have come, like seeing all those, like hearing firsthand, from people, of like what happened, before somebody came to rehab?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we do a lot of family work, and we often find it's a lot of families that are calling us up initially as well. So absolutely, we completely understand that. And long after treatment as well, we still get family members that stay in touch with us and that are really keen to continue attending family group, and they find it really supportive in that sense. And we also have personal experience within the team. A lot of us, if we haven't suffered necessarily with addiction ourselves, we find that we've had loved ones ourselves in addiction, and so we have our own personal experience of going through that situation. And that's what makes a team such a great team, because it's a fountain of experience as well as knowledge.
I think that, like, out of everything you've said, like the thing that stands out to me the most for people to know is that, like, just to trust your own instinct, is not to, because I know people like think they're going crazy or doubt their own instincts, but it's kind of like when you have a consistent nagging instinct that something is not right, just to follow that, right?
Yeah, I always say what harm is it going to cause to follow it and just see. If you don't follow it, the chances are, and you were right, then there may be more harm potentially. Whereas if you have that instinct to pick up the phone and make some inquiries, to make some suggestions, what harm is that going to cause? And if it does, it's highlighting to you actually that there is a problem and something does need to be done, whether that happens now or whether that needs more support or information. That's another process.
Yeah, cool. So let's move on to the next question, which is, what happens during rehab? Like, what are the stages? How do people typically respond? And what do they find difficult? And what do people love? And what do you see different about them?
Okay. So, well, obviously, everyone goes through our admission process. So, that's where they're kind of explained about rehab and things like that. And then on day of arrival, we have an admission process, and we take the first day kind of really easy. It is just about getting you through the door. It is about understanding the anxiety and the fears that can be present. So it is about just slowly introducing you, getting you settled in your room, some comfort, going over some of the stuff that we need to, obviously for health and safety, to ensure that we're looking after you, not just in regards to your physical and mental health, but also the environment and your general well-being. And then once that's done, we kind of try and introduce you to the community as well. You'll have a doctor's assessment, and that doctor's assessment really highlights an opportunity of what your life's been like. It's about where you feel mentally, where you feel physically. So we can put a plan together, and we can discuss that with the rest of the team as to the best way to support you going forward. And then obviously in treatment, you know, the program starts. I think what surprises people is the program's quite intense. You know, you're in groups between 9 and 4 o'clock every day, with 15-minute breaks in between, and, you know, an hour at lunchtime. But it can be quite intense sometimes in that way, but it can also be extremely rewarding, because you're hearing people open up. And I can't tell you how many times a client has turned around and said to me, "You've pretty much described my entire life." And the shock that someone's been able to pretty much describe their entire life, and it's not even been their life they've been talking about, is just a magical moment for that client, because it's almost like, wow, someone's heard, someone knows, someone gets it. I haven't got to explain it, I haven't got to justify it. And then a lot of our work is group work, and that's because, you know, research shows that the most effective way to deal with addiction is through group work. You're less likely to manipulate, to deceive, to hide, because you're in a group environment. And there's such a domino effect. The minute that one person's open and shares, you just freely see everyone start talking. You know, and it's really, really supportive in that environment. There is one-to-one sessions once a week, you know, and we can always be person-centered around that as well, where sometimes there might be something you're not ready to take to group yet, but you kind of want to discuss on a one-to-one, just to get some understanding for yourself first, or maybe trust whatever that gut reaction that you're having about something, because sometimes there can be a lot of trauma that comes up for people. Things that they've wanted to keep buried, things that they've not wanted to acknowledge, and we work with people at that pace. It's not about let's just open the box on everything and get everything out there. That's not healthy. It's a little bit at a time, and that process just helps us to slow it down. You know, so I think the thing that people enjoy most about rehab is being able to have a laugh again without requiring a substance. That belly laughter, that right in the pit of their belly, laughing at something and realizing actually they don't need that substance to be confident or to function in society. I think that's probably one of the most precious thing that people say about treatment, just being able to talk to people again and have a laugh and do things like a quiz or a board game that they haven't done in a long time. You know, things like that is, you know, it's really important. And I think some of the lows can be, it's a hard journey. No one's going to sit here and say it's an easy journey, but it's about it becoming worth it, because you get to have a life that you want to have again. You get to feel connected to yourself again. But it is hard. There will be lots of emotions, and it's about learning to understand those emotions, process those emotions, and cope with them in a different way. And often we find a lot of people coming into treatment have low self-esteem. You know, they've lost themselves. They don't have an identity. They don't know who they are anymore. And this is all about that kind of reconnection, and that can be a really hard thing to acknowledge, and then to work on. Because it's all about you working on yourself. So I'd probably say they're probably the key things, really.
Yeah. And what do people notice, like the most thing about how they change, you know, like from when they come in? I would imagine that it's quite, you know, like we can only see ourselves change in hindsight, right? So it's kind of like interesting for people, I guess, after they're going through the process of rehab and getting to, you know, towards the end of, say, a 28-day period, and looking back at how they came in versus how they are now, having had some sense of awakening to who they are again. What do they notice the most in that?
I think you've got the first kind of thing is sometimes the physical appearance.
Yeah.
You know, they notice the self-care's back, the small things, you know, looking after their hair and, you know, just like maintenance that way of those things, you know, because you can really destroy the body through addiction, and just having a bit of colour back in your cheeks and things like that is actually really nice to them, because it gives them that confidence to look at themselves. You know, But also there's things like being able to hold their head up, you know, being able to hold eye contact and have conversations. It can be small things like that that we can take for granted and not realise we've got into a pattern of doing. But knowing that they feel lighter emotionally, not just physically, they feel lighter because they've let some stuff go, they've processed some stuff, and they've done some healing. So being able to walk around more freely and just, you know, being excited again for life and wanting to make amends and do things differently can be some of the signs. And I think, you know, it can be small things like that. Other people see improvements in their relationships. You know, others find that work has been really supportive and they're really excited to go back to work. It can be a whole range of spectrums. And I think sometimes it's knowing that they've completed something for the first time in a long time.
And for some people, I guess all of those things, right? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's quite magical, isn't it, really, to see people having that experience of transformation.
It's such an honour to be a part of that journey. And I think, you know, speaking for the team as well, I think that's part of why we love our jobs as much as we do, because we get to see that. We can get some clients come in and they can be, you know, really frustrated, really resistant, you know, not want to, and then, you know, they can be angry at everything, but by the end of it they're like, I don't want to leave. Actually, it sounds really crazy. There's a part of me that does, because I want to go and see my loved ones, but the other part of me goes, this has been the best time of my life as well, because they've been allowed to be themselves. And it can and you can see that towards the end. So we often find the ones that are most resistant at the beginning of treatment, at the end of treatment, are going, you know, this place is great, and, you know, what they've got, the peers that have been around them and things like that, you know, you often see a completely different side of them. They've just let some of their barriers down.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so the next question is, I mean, and I know we've covered and we've talked about varying lengths of time that people come into rehab, but like what, you know, in the grand scheme of things, what would you call that? Is that just the start, or is that the end? You know, it's kind of like, is that the start of someone's new life? Do they actually heal enough, or, you know, how much responsibility, I guess, is on them, you know, what they have to do to maintain that when they leave?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's not about the length of stay necessarily. It's about what you put in is what you're going to take out of treatment. And I think, you know, it is one day at a time. We say that a lot. It's about trying to encourage someone to be in the present moment. And I think, you know, that varying length of treatment it's there as an option for people because it's something new, and it might be the first time that they're looking at treatment. It might be the first time they've done anything like this, and of course sometimes you can be unsure about it. So yeah, I mean, it's there, but our recommended obviously is 28 days, but we find that people have done 7 days, 10 days of treatment, completed a detox, done some therapy and treatment, and are still clean to this day. You know, and so it's not so much about that, it's about what you need, and that's on an individual basis, really.
So how do you measure success? You know, what would you call success, and like, do you keep in touch with people afterwards?
Yeah, we do. So we have an alumni team, which is once you complete treatment and you graduate, you become part of. But and as much as they stay in contact with them as well, we find that, you know, a lot of our clients that have been to our centres stay in touch. You know, I had a phone call with a gentleman the other day, actually, who said he just every 6 months he opens his AA book and reads all the comments that were written in there, and he called and he said, you know, I really just wanted to touch base with you, Jenna, because it's been 3 years since I've been clean, and I can't believe it, you know, and I wanted to see if you were still there, and, you know, how are you doing, and, you know, and he just wanted to say thank you to Sanctuary Lodge, you know, and I was like, of course we remember you, and, you know, and we were talking and we had a really good conversation. He wants to come back and do some shares for the centre and pass his message on to others, you know. When he first came into treatment, he couldn't sit still. He just could not sit still. It was constant pacing of the corridors, couldn't do it, didn't want to let go of the emotions, and so to hear, 3 years, yeah, he's clean. It is possible. And I think that's the message. We do get people that call and want to let us know how they're getting on, whether it's 1 week after, 2 weeks after. We get a lot of people after a year, they want to come back and celebrate their birthday 1 year clean with us and see us and things like that. And they do that at aftercare. But yeah, a lot of clients do. And I think success is about someone being able to go out there and live life on life's terms. Life isn't perfect, regardless of an illness or not. Everyone has struggles, everyone has problems. But I think for someone with addiction, it's about just being able to get back to what they want their lives to be, whether they want that to be improved relationships, or whether they want their career to take off again, or whether they want to retire and enjoy the rest of their lives. It's about what that goal is for them, and that can vary client to client.
Wow. So my next question is about treating alcohol and drug problems at the same time. So can they be treated at the same time? Because I know a lot of people get mixed up in both, right? And it's like they'll maybe start with one or the other and then sort of venture into both at the same time. And so how does that work?
Of course, absolutely. I think, medically, absolutely, we can always support that as well. Our consultant psychiatrist will look at that and he'll deem what he feels is the best appropriate way to go forward. And I think therapeutically, we also deal with that. For us, I said at the beginning, it's not about the substance of choice. It is about understanding some of the stigmas that maybe go with that substance of choice, or the behaviours that can go with that. But ultimately, it's about the individual, because you'll find just as much as they may be addicted to alcohol and a drug at the same time, they can also be addicted to things like work, gym, relationships. It's not about that, it's about what's going on for them. So we kind of take that away, and we, part of the 12-step program is the first step looks at addiction. The 11 remaining steps is about how to live life differently. So it's that kind of opportunity, and it's also not forgetting alcohol is a drug. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's not a drug. It's still classed as a drug that, is a mood altering substances that we choose to put into our body. Yeah. So, ultimately as well, it's trying to break away from all of those myths and stop the obsession on the actual substance and look at what's going on, your emotions, your feelings, that inability to be able to cope with them and process it, and just wanting instant gratification. This is that opportunity to put that aside and go, because we often find that once we do that, a lot of clients, when they look back over their lives, they go, actually, there's been other things since then, or there was things before that. And it's just that, alcohol or whatever the drug of choice may be, cocaine, heroin, prescription drugs, I mean, that's been a massive thing of late, is that's just what's come to light at the moment. It's taken them to the next level. It doesn't mean there wasn't a level before that. So this is that opportunity to say, yeah, we look at that. We look at the individual, the person as a whole, not just their substance of choice.
Yeah. And how does mental health tie into that? Like when people have diagnosed mental health conditions, do they get treated for that? Does that make a difference to the treatment they get?
Yeah, absolutely. We work with we find with a lot of people with addiction, which is, mental health in its own right as well, is often not alone. It comes with something else. That can be OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. It could be a depression, anxiety. You can have a whole mixture. We often find that, but for us sometimes, and what is the key is finding out whether the addiction fuels the other mental health, or if it's the depression, say for example, that's fueling the addiction. But we can't know that until we put a pause on the addiction to say, right, what's coming up now, what's going on, for us to be able to really assess it. So a lot of times these behaviours coincide. A lot of times what is addiction is getting classed in depression or in other things, and actually it's just getting a lot of understanding, and this is an opportunity to just slow that process down and go, right, what is what? So absolutely, it's looking at that, because a lot of what we do in the therapy program is we provide a program that is for the rest of their lives, that they can continue to work every day. And that program is about their life. It's not just about the addiction. You can apply it to everything within their lives. So it's an opportunity to look at that, different coping strategies. You know, we have dialectical behaviour therapy, which provides people with really key, essential, practical tools to try and improve the communication and emotional regulation. And that was originally designed for those that suffered with borderline personality disorder, but they found it to be really effective with addiction as well. You know, and clients respond really, really well to that, because it's something they can understand and look at, and then they can also try out and learn.
Yeah. So there's so much to consider, isn't there? I mean, I think that what you're saying is, or what it sounds like is, and in my own experience, what I've seen is that often people that are struggling with addiction are like, will go to seek professional help outside of rehab before they make it that far, and end up with a diagnosis of a mental health condition, you know, on medication for different things. And what you're saying is that you, once you take away the drugs and detox them and get them into being present, that you can actually see whether it was one or the other, one fueling the other, or whether there genuinely is some sort of chemical imbalance and they really do have a mental health condition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. That sounds useful to know. So, you know, let's talk about the NHS and how it works. From what I understand, you know, the NHS in some areas get funding to give people treatment, and you know, you can get help, but it's quite a lengthy process from what I understand. And every individual area has a different time length and a different process to get people into treatment. But like with what the treatment that Sanctuary Lodge provides, from what I understand, people can get into treatment really quickly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, it does. NHS per county, per area varies massively as to what they can offer, and what they can support, you know, and sometimes their budget isn't always directed towards addiction. You know, and it is a lengthy referral process. What you find is more often than not, is that the NHS can do detoxes, but then it's almost like now you have to go on a referral waiting list for CBT or certain therapy, but that list can be quite long, and then sometimes that list is on the phone. It's not necessarily face to face, which, like we said, you know, at one point, addiction, the best way to beat it is through connection. So if you haven't got that there, it can take quite a while to get some funding or to be able to do that. And sometimes people haven't got that time. You know, they can be, you know, addiction is extremely dangerous. It's, you know, it's an illness, a progressive illness that just wants to kill the person. So it's really important in that way, that just says sometimes actually we can't wait 3 months, 6 months, especially if the person is motivated to do something as well. Because that can change, you know, if they lose that hope or that little bit of motivation that they have got. So sometimes the option to come into treatment, like at Sanctuary Lodge, is, you know, it is something that they can get straight into and they can get involved, you know, and it's a rolling program. So you get the benefit of people that have been in for a couple of days, for a week, to those that are coming to leaving their treatment. And that really just shows them the journey as well, you know, because we get a lot of them saying, oh, I hope I feel that way in 28 days or 14 days is where you're at. So it helps for them to see that journey panning out. So it's a real opportunity to come into treatment quite quickly, you know, and we're obviously one of 8 centres. So, you know, even if you can't necessarily come here, there'll hopefully always be a bed available as quickly as possible somewhere else, you know, so there is that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and that's so important. Like you said, I think what stood out to me the most thing was like the motivation, you know, when somebody's ready, when they decide to do it. If they have to go on a waiting list, you know, anything can happen in that period, right? To the point where next thing, a couple of more years have gone by, you know, and it's like becomes like, again, you have to wait to get to that point where they go, yes, you know, I want to do something about this, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, you know, after rehab, what happens? It's like, how about like people, like, I know you said some people are waiting to go back to their jobs and different things in their lives and their families, but for people that have lived a life of escapism, you know, of avoidance, and have really become introverted and sort of escaped from life, you know, and have had nothing, and they kind of want to, like, at that point of feeling a bit more empowered to take control of their own life, you know, is that something that you help people with, or do people get some direction with, you know, how would they get back into life, you know, how does that start off, and how do people get on with that?
Yeah, I think, you know, the last week of treatment, what we kind of really focus on is like a continued recovery plan. And that continued recovery plan is about breaking down every aspect of their life. So, you know, what's your kind of goal career-wise? What's your goal relationship-wise? What's your goal your emotional well-being? You know, what's your goal with your recovery program? What are you going to keep doing? And it gives them an opportunity to then put an action plan, and they share that and they talk that through in group, but they also talk that through with their therapist, you know. And absolutely, if we've got links that we can let them know about, that we will. You know, sometimes we have people that struggled with housing, and we've referred on to community projects that continue, especially that have got a 12-step ethos. You know, and we really encourage people to get connected with the 12-step program when they leave, find themselves that sponsor to continue, because this isn't about, oh, I've done it now and now I can do it again by myself. What addiction is trying to say is you can't do it by yourself. You need a support network, and you need to keep talking. This is really important, that you're looking at all aspects of your life, and that's what we do throughout treatment, but we kind of really try and bring that in the last week to say, right, what do we need to start looking at now? What do you want to start focusing on? What's going to be the most important? You know, we do get a lot of clients that come in that are business owners, you know, and for them it's just getting back to opening the 2 months of letters they haven't opened. And they might want to get that sent in towards the end of their treatment, so we can support them with starting that process. So that's always considered on a really person-centered way, and as to the best way that we can do that, because everyone will have different needs.
Yeah. So what exactly is aftercare and alumni? Like, what are they, and like what specifically do people get from those?
Yeah, absolutely. So all clients that graduate from treatment, they get aftercare for a year, which means that you can come back once a week to the centre to have a group session with everyone else that's left treatment. So it's an opportunity to come back and just check in and get that support. And then obviously you become part of our alumni as well. And the alumni is a place that you can check in. They check in with you as well. They have a dedicated phone line. You know, they organise events throughout the year, formal events, informal events. So we've had a Christmas party. They've done things like zip lining, and it's bowling, where we just get everyone together again, and it's just reminding you that you don't need a substance to be able to enjoy an activity or get together. But it's also people to keep coming together, and for people to see each other's journeys, that recovery is possible. And that's part of really what that message of aftercare and alumni is carrying. They also have a private Facebook group that all clients that have graduated from, that they can be a part of, and it's just a platform for them. So it's a place for them to connect, because I think when you come into treatment, you can form really close bonds that you kind of want to continue when you leave. And though they may not have been people you would have come across in life in general, the connection and what you learn and the way that what you share in treatment, it's really important when you leave as well, to keep some of those relationships going for some of them, and it's an opportunity for them to get together, to be able to do that as well. So yeah, it's a really good opportunity just to get some extra support, because we can all need that. Sometimes we all just need that extra phone call, or sometimes we could be having an off day or a good day. Sometimes we get a lot of people who want to call up and just say how great they're feeling, and they didn't realise they could ever feel that way, and they wanted to share that. And you know, it's not always just the doom and gloom. It's, you know, sometimes it is those kind of moments of, you know, I'm really hopeful, and today has been great, or I managed to go and face something that I haven't been able to do in a long time, and I just wanted to share that with the team, and it can be things like that.
Yeah. So aftercare is a weekly group where they can come back to the centre, and Alumni is lifetime, right? They become part of the Alumni for however long they want.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
yeah. And it's an opportunity for them. Yeah, no, it's an opportunity for them to just be part of something bigger as well.
And do many people do that to stay in the alumni and the groups and stay in touch and form a community?
Yeah, absolutely. Our aftercare is really successful. We can have sometimes up to 30 clients coming every week back to treatment for a session, and it's great to see. And I think, they get something really valuable out of it as well. And the majority of people want to stay in touch with the alumni as well, because it's extra support. It's someone being able to call in and check in with them that can sometimes be outside of their support network, that doesn't have the emotional involvement that can cloud thinking sometimes, or stop listening abilities. This is a place that they can just pick up the phone and call and come to events and know they're not alone.
Yeah, that sounds really important, because it's when you've come from a life of, where we started this conversation of being isolated and alone in your own mind, even if it's not physically, it's kind of like, seems great to have a real connectedness and, to the world, to life, to people, especially people on the same journey, where you can share things.
Yeah, it's really precious.
Yeah. So do people have to go to meetings and, to maintain their recovery, or are there other ways of people, maintaining what they've learned there?
I think, what we've found in our experience is the 12-step program is a really, really good program to help people maintain abstinence. Whilst they're in treatment, they attend 4 meetings a week, and they get to see a variety of them. So it's not just one. There's AA, Alcoholic Anonymous, NA, Narcotic Anonymous, CA, Cocaine Anonymous. So they get a variety of them, and you'd be surprised. I mean, cocaine might not be their substance of choice, but they actually find they really connect with that particular meeting. So they get to attend those meetings in treatment, and they get to see what that's like. And then we do suggest when they leave treatment that actually it's really important to keep doing that. And we really encourage 90 and 90 meetings in 90 days, because our research shows that if you can do that, it helps to break the pattern of behaviour, because you're taking away one thing, you kind of need to put something else in place of it, and that becomes these meetings. And that is a real opportunity. We often get clients going, but I can't do that, I work and all this, and it's like, but when you were in active addiction, you were spending 12, 13, 14 hours a day using your substance of choice between your day, and all of a sudden now you can't find an hour or 2 hours just to go to a meeting. So this comes where we look at the thinking again, and we kind of encourage people to say, take it a day at a time. Do a meeting. Actually, if you feel like you need to talk today, go to a meeting. Sometimes we find clients want to do 2-3 meetings a day. So it is a whole variety out there. But there is also the options, and we do. Some clients prefer like smart recovery group meetings, and we can refer them to those where it's a bit more practical and around relapse prevention and workshops like that. So, we can ultimately as well, we will work with the individual to refer them onto local drug and alcohol services if that's what they want to continue to engage with for extra support, or other community services as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. So the last question is about the costs. So I know that there's a sliding scale of costs, and there's lots of variables what make a difference, so what is that like, not necessarily what are the costs, but what makes the difference, I know it's to do with where people go and what type, where they stay, whether they stay on their own or different things, and the type of centres and things like that.
Yeah, I think the cost that varies is, the type of program that you're doing. I think, if it's more a CBT program, it's very different setup and program for the day. Whereas if you're doing the 12-step kind of program, it's a bit more intense, and there's a lot more kind of put in with that. you know, so that can be a variable. I think it is about sometimes the accommodation as well. You know, at Sanctuary Lodge, you know, majority of all the rooms are, you know, we've got 2 shared rooms, but they're en suite. Not all accommodation at other centres is the same. So obviously that has a play to fit in with it. Sometimes it's location as well, the grounds that go with it. We've got some beautiful countryside in Housestead, you know, and sometimes it's the facilities as well. Not because of the size of some of the locations, they can't necessarily have all of the facilities. We have like a gym here, you know, so we have those kind of opportunities to have a no smoking area, smoking area. So there's a bit of space in the grounds for that. So sometimes all of those can kind of play a role in it as well.
Yeah. Awesome. So is there anything else? I mean, like, we're coming towards the end. Is there anything that like has come to you that you would love for people to know? Anything extra that we haven't covered that comes to mind that you think would be important?
I think, you know, there's never a right time for anyone that's thinking about it. There's never going to be a right time. It's kind of trust that gut reaction and just give yourself an opportunity to have some time out, to look at yourself, to reconnect. I think that's really important. You know, I know something that's recently happened is that Sanctuary Lodge has become Bupa approved, as a couple of our other centres have, like Primrose and Banbury. And I think, you know, to be recognised by Bupa is a massive achievement, because a lot of people in the way society is going these days have insurance like Bupa, you know, that will cover 28 days of treatment with us. And that's a real opportunity to say, you know, and it can be a massive weight off people's shoulders as well, to know that they've got that policy in their bag that says, actually, there's an opportunity just to go and take 28 days out and give myself some time, because whatever I'm doing is not working. So it's just an opportunity to try something different. So I always say, you know, ask yourself, what have you got to lose?
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time, Jenna.
Welcome.